Um, I'm a registered nurse, and I work in a psychiatric clinic here in Malmö, in a psychiatric intensive care unit. And I also work in a child psychiatric emergency department. Since 8 or 9 years, I've been studying the consequences, the lives and health risks connected with over-indebtedness. And I have an own experience many years ago. So, well, I know something about this. And the presentation I will do connects here and there with Stuart Stamp's wonderful presentation. So, can we have the next picture, please, Noel? Oh, yeah, thank you. In this context, I want to start with the column in life, the columns, and that is safety. It is connected with in what grade you can fulfill your basic needs. And then we have the health and well-being. The safety and the basic needs is connected with the social authorities, and health and well-being with my context in care. And the fulfillment of this, is there a noise somewhere? No. And the fulfillment of those two manage the way you live. Do you live to live, or do you live to die? And with over-indebtedness can emerge from bad health or some, thank you, life events like accidents, sickness, or whatever. And the fulfillment of these phenomena, the best place you can fulfill them and have a sense of coherence in your life is your home. And you can move wherever you want around the world, but everywhere you move, that's your home. And that's because you can fulfill your basic needs, and with that you can feel your in well-being and a good health. So when I meet patients that are in some kind of crisis, I start the meeting with them with this question: do you live to live, or do you live to die? And that is a question I think money advisors or practitioners in primary care can ask if you think that here is something wrong. And can I have the next picture, please? Yeah. And when we meet the over-indebted and the situation they are in, have influence on the human rights in many ways, and I will show you during this presentation how they connect. And can I have the next picture, please? Yes. To live in security and no poverty. To live in security, I already told you about that. It's the fulfillment of basic needs. And when you are over-indebted, your basic needs will be harder to fulfill, and you sleep less, you eat less, you are isolating yourself from your friends, or you stay at home and stay alone. And while the envelopes from the debt collection companies comes, you will feel more stressed and you feel more anxiety, and your health will be more bad, and it's often it starts with that you have these problems, and when you seek the primary care, people who are in this situation tend to want help from the general practitioners more than the average people. This is a sign of here is something going on, and when it does so, you can also, as a money advisor or a general practitioner, you can ask the question: people in your life situation often thinking of seeing a death as a solution of a problem. How is it with you? And I know this question came up with Stuart's presentation. So this can be a start of solving the problems, and a very important part in this is this individual isn't anymore alone with these problems, because if one is alone with these problems, the problem will be bigger and bigger and bigger, and maybe one day there is one envelope too much, and you see the one way to live, to die, as the only solution to your problem. And another aspect of this that I want to talk about, it's a study made 3 years after the debt settlement plan was fulfilled. And I can say in my presentation, there are several reports that Richard Ahlström was the conductor to. And one of these studies is 3 years after completing debt settlement, 67% have seriously considered suicide 1 or more times, and 28% have tried to take their own life 1 or more times. And of course, there are those who committed suicide. And to live in security, many, as you can see, many of those were evicted, and they had to move around to friends, or maybe the social authorities had some solutions for it. In my point of view, there shouldn't happen at all, these evictions, because I think both society will gain on not evict people or families, and most of all, the individuals will, of course, do better if they don't have to. And as you saw in my first picture, all this fulfillment of basic needs and well-being and health was a part in one's home. And if you take that home away, where do you will put your life in? You have no home, so you're just out in an open air, and you don't know what is going to happen. You don't know where to stay. And if you have children, they have to move and they have to explain for the friends why they move, if they do. So there is productive to evict people in these situations. And I think the state can afford to help people out of this situation so they can stay. I think it will cost more for society to evict people. And can I have the next picture, please? Yes. In Sweden, the money advisors organization is a well-functioning organization, and I can see that they maybe should get more place in the situations of the over-indebted. I heard nice examples here. The psychologists work together with the money advisors, and so it's easy to cooperate with the money advisors in Sweden in general. But the hard part in this is to connect the debt enforcement authorities. It's kind of that they are living in their own place in life outside the reality we live in. And there is one of the human rights is to eat or not feeling hunger, and the enforcement DEAs have a podcast, and there is one comment that children and adolescents must eat less, and this is one of the jurisdictions that they don't have to do anything with. This is the care or the child's experts who should say something about what child should eat or not, and eat less. This is not the key issues regarding kids, because kids shouldn't eat less. They should eat the right food, and the right food, the nutritious food is sometimes cheaper, except porridge, for instance. That's also is nutritious. So just stepping in this context is not the place for the debt enforcement authorities, and this is not the only area that there is involving in that they shouldn't. And this makes we can see that they don't really got the understanding for all the people that is suffering from this over-indebtedness and the illnesses with it. And as we can see, the social security for the kids in this situation is also affected by the economic circumstances in the family. So can I have the next picture, please? Thank you. Health and well-being. The left one report from 2014 is this is Richard's report from the Consumer Agency, and as we can see, when they constructed these debt settlement plans, there was no involvement of the medical and healthcare or social services and so on. So the professionals who do the assessments and so on regarding debt settlement plan and other things in their jurisdiction, there is only jurists and criminologists that do these assessments, and I know that they've been offered medical competencies, but they refuse, or they denied to take them in their assessment and decisions. And this is a huge problem, because you as if you're sick, or you're a mother, lone mother with kids, or you're elderly, how could you raise your voice against criminologists and jurists in the DEA? So this is a big problem, as I see it, in Sweden. We have a good example in Denmark. This is something I'm going to show you later on, but I just want to say it in this context, is that when you're going to start a debt settlement plan, the court help you with a jurist or a lawyer that look into your interests, and they speak for you. So in Denmark, the thought is that you shouldn't be alone against the state. So this is the closest country that Sweden has to learn from. And regarding health and well-being in the context of debt settlement plans, so this is Richard too. 3 years after their debt settlement plans ending, 33% had less health than they had before they started the debt settlement plan. Can I have a next, please? And we were talking about, I think you talked about that, Stuart, see what you talked about, the how much you can cope with, and I often talk about the one's capacity, and this is the central is the column when you are dealing with authorities or social or DEAs and so on. You can't do any more than you have the capacity for. So, for instance, if you're sick and the debts are the cause of that, you don't have the capacity to fulfill all the requirements. You have to have some help, and of course, the money advisors are doing a big work here. And as I can see, we also, as in Sweden, you have to have the psychologist working together with the money advisors. And one thing in this context is we need a standardized care of people in overdebtedness, and that is what we are working on now in Sweden. We started a network, cross-professional network, with the money advisors, the primary care, specialist psychiatric care, and research. And we started up with the debt enforcement authorities, but they jumped off this network, and I think they are one of the most important participants in this network, but they prioritized other things. They were willing to serve us with the statistics and so on for research, but research doesn't really help people now. It doesn't help the patients that visit us they come to us in hospital. We have to do something now about it. And this spiral, when you get problems with your money, this spiral goes fast down. But I would say with the situation given today, at least in Sweden, we can, okay, the spiral goes down, but we can make the spiral go down slowly or slower, because just with the question, it's so easy to ask this. As I said, people in your situation might think of want to take their lives. They can't see, they are hopeless. They don't see the future. How is it with you? And if you get a yes with that question, you have then they know that they are not alone. And of course, when you're money advisors, you don't got the medical skills that you can say, I want to help you, and I will help you with all what I got, but I can't help you with everything. So I want you to go to the primary care. You can call me when you got a time settled with them, and then you and I can book a time after the visit to the primary care. It's quite easy, and I can speak for myself. I can give you an example for myself. I've got the bipolar disorder. I was diagnosed 2014, and I had, of course, I was a hypoman, so I spent a lot of money. I got problems with the DEA, and they didn't take any. They didn't see it as something that could cause me problem with paying the debts, or that could cause the life of me and so on. So I was totally hopeless. And what Stuart told you about when they are coming to visit you at the money advisor office, you look calm and everything seems to be good. But if you look at the figures of the debt, if that is a very high number and your client is very calm, it could be as we call it, the suicidal calmness. And that was just what was happening to me. I saw no hope, and then I decided I wanted to die on my own terms. So everything was planned. What music I should have in my ears when I was hanging there. I was working at the acute award in Lund, and I prepared myself so the colleagues from the ambulance shouldn't have to have anything to do with all the mess that comes with someone hanging. So I was so relieved. So every night when I turned my back to my wife, and I was just smiling and feeling, oh, next Thursday it will all be over. And I was calm and so on. But my wife didn't think that was a good thing. She knew I was filled with anxiety and problems and stressed and everything. And all of a sudden I was just calm. And that was something that she didn't like at all. So one day she looked me right in the eyes and said, Frederick, yeah, you will stay, won't you? And that turned everything around. So I know what a little question can do in a situation full of hopelessness. So as I told you, you can make this downturning spiral. You can slow it down for the moment, and just to hear that, okay, they want to help me and I can see the light in the tunnel and so on. So it's not so, it's like a heart starter that are hanging around our societies, but it's a help to prevent these psychological accidents. So thank you. Next picture. Before the law. As I told you earlier, in Sweden it's almost exclusively criminologists and jurists who handle the cases at the DEA. And I think you have another picture from the DEA. It's also from this pod. I think that children financially vulnerable in financial vulnerable families need to take responsibility. And children in these families, they already take a huge amount of responsibility, which they shouldn't do. And to read this, I don't think it's encouraging at all. This comment or this, it's more or less counterproductive and make these kids even more sad or stressed. And so, oh, must I take even more responsibility, and this makes the situation for the kids even more harmful. I don't know if I told you, but in Sweden there's about 20% of all both women and men that get this debt settlement plan have a psychiatric diagnosis or mental illness. And once again, the ones at the DEA that help on this, they are, as I said, criminologists and jurists. And that is something I must say must be before the law. Yes, and there is something else. If you have a debt to the debt collection company in Sweden, it's written off after 10 years. But if they send you an invoice or just a letter, this time will be prolonged with another 10 years. So another 10 years goes, and you get this envelope or invoice from them. After 9 years, it will be prolonged with another 10 years. So it's, I think, I don't know if that exists somewhere else in Europe or in the world, I don't know. Okay, next picture, please. Yes, in Sweden, debt settlement in Sweden, I think for many it's a trap more than a rehabilitation or a way back to life. I told you earlier that there is a, yes, okay, I see. When you are in a debt settlement regime, the biggest event in the group of those having a debt settlement, the biggest events, an event could be a divorce or death or whatever, but the biggest group in this is 71% people becoming pensioners, going into what do you call it? What do you call it in English? Pensioner, retirement. And you can see for yourself. There's a lot of text, but my aim with this was that you can look it through yourself after this. But Richard did a study he looked at all these persons that had a debt settlement plan, and he could see the mean age of those getting debt settlement plan was men in 53 years old, and he could see that in this group 12.36% of the service group they died at that age, and in the population in general there were 0.46%, and this means is 30 times higher. So again, debt settlement plan could be a trap if we don't have someone following the people that have a debt settlement plan, and if they don't get this standardized care with primary care, psychiatric care, and so on. I will not stay as so long on this picture, but I want to say in the psychiatric clinic, when a patient comes to us with anxiety or a deep depression, or maybe with the bipolar disorder that's got worsened, and we help them in our ward. We give them medication, we talk with them, get therapies and so on. The first thing we do is that they should eat, sleep, and rest their brains. This is the key elements that we have to do for a starter. And when the patient get better, when we know the patient have problems with the economy, we wonder, what is this person's biggest problem? The illness or the debt situation? Just as an example. Yes, next picture. I can see I have 10 minutes left. Elderly, yeah. As I told you, what 71% that became pensioners, and we have this extreme case in Sweden. The oldest person that got a debt settlement plan was 94 years, and I wonder why couldn't this debt be written off? And one thing more in Sweden, of all the debts to the DEA, it's about 90 something millions. There are 20. All the debts were 20% of all these debts was debts that pensioners had, and they of the whole group with debt, the pensioners is 1/11 in this group. So it's alarming, I must say. Yes. Okay. Next picture, please. Yes, this is my meaning as mandatory immediate debt relief for those goes into retirement. But of course, there are always exceptions. But this should be the main course in this with the elderly, because you have worked all your life and you're looking forward to to live to 70, 80 or 90, and you will not live in anxiety and depression and so on. The wages is already far more less than you had when you worked. So, and then on that, you should pay a debt settlement plan or just pay your debts. That is not, I don't know, ethical. And I think ethical problems around that. I don't know. Next picture, please. Oh yeah, children. In Sweden, there are last year there were 572 children that had to experience eviction, and in my opinion, no family or no kids should be evicted at all. Once again, there is not much to gain on to help them stay in their own home, because if they can't stay at home, where should they have their column in life, or where should they put their life in, because the home is gone and away. And about 16% of all children in Sweden live in economic vulnerable families. And as we can see in Sweden, adolescents and young grown-ups are having a increase in suicides rates. And then there's another problem with kids in families with economic vulnerable, is that they inherit their life situation goes on to their family, to their kid. So if we could stop this here and now, we could eliminate the risks that comes for the next generation. And another thing that is important is we know the rates of suicide attempts and suicides are much higher with the indebted. We already know that. But next step is if a parent commits suicide, there is the risk of the kids committing suicide is twice as high. And if the child is really young when the parent commits suicide, the risk is threefold that the child will do the same when it's getting older. Next picture, please. Yes, and this is something the world I will spread around as much as I can. I don't know how you say it in English, but the lowest amount of money you will have when you're having a debt settlement plan. I wrote reservation amount. I don't know the English word for it, but I think you understand, should be doubled. And never a longer debt restructuring plan than 3 years. In Sweden, it's between 3 or 5 years. If you get 3 years payment, you can't hire or rent a home, because you will have your marks in the register for the 2 years to come before 5 years. And always child impact analysis and child expert, psychiatrist or child and the child should have a legal advisory too, and that should be a requirement for the enforcement authorities to have. And never home visits by enforcement authorities with the police officers, and that happens in Sweden. And if the family is too hard hit by the economic situation, the debts should be written off, and never eviction for families. And the families should, the kids should always have a legal representative speaking for them. Yes, please, next. Yes, we have these role models. Stuart already told us about Ireland. But then you have the example of Denmark, as I already told you. And in England, you have this debt respite scheme, which means that if you're in some kind of health, medical issue or psychiatric issue, you can have a breathing space for 2 months, just to, you know, getting the medications right, to recovery and so on. But if that time isn't good, long enough, you can have that time the death respite breathing space for 1 more month and so on. So here's the DEA or and the medical professions, they cooperates together, and that is really good, and that I think prevents suicide attempts and suicides, and life and health risks overall. And then you can see it down there. We have this cross-professional, cross-organizational networks work. But as I said, in this first phase, it's focused on the research. Can I have next, please? Oh, yes. Thank you for having me. Now I'm open for any questions.
Thank you very much, Frederick, for your impressive